everyone, in this lesson I'd like to show you how to use the diminished chords in a few ways that you might not have thought about previously. If you'd like to get a downloadable PDF for any of the examples that I'm going to be talking about in today's session, then please check out the link which is listed and linked below. If any of these concepts seem overwhelming to you, then please check out my beginner jazz guitar guide, which is completely free, or my drop to course. So I'm taking as read that if you're watching this video, you already know a little bit about drop to and diminished chord voicing. So I'm going to take as read that if I ask you to play C7 chords, drop to C7 chords, that you'd be able to grab them like this. I'm also going to take as read that you can convert any of those to C7 flat 9 chords to get these. And lastly, I'm going to take as read that you know how to use these in a 2-5 situation. So you can go G minor, C7 flat 9, F major 7, G minor 7, C7 flat 9, F major 7, and that you can repeat that process up the entire guitar neck in all 4 of those positions. If that's something that you can't do, then I recommend checking both of those resources out which I have just mentioned. The problem with diminished chords is that they move in minor thirds, and if you use them in that way, it kind of has that cheesy kind of, effect that you hear in films and stuff, which it's okay to practice them that way to get used to them, but as soon as you've done that, you want to really try and make more music with them. So the examples here will help you break out of kind of using that minor thirds thing and hopefully produce something a little bit more musical. For all 3 examples, I'm basically going to be using the same diminished scale line, and really it's not a line as such, it's just a movement throughout the scale that sounds like this. And you could hear that could easily go to the 1 chord. I'm generally thinking of a C7 flat 9 or a C sharp diminished for all of these chords. Example number 1 sounds like this. So what's going on there? So as you could probably see, I'm basically playing off that common diminished shape, but what I'm doing is basically a couple of things, and there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The first is to play this chord, which isn't much of a chord by itself. It's got all of the notes from the diminished scale, but it's not really much of a standalone voicing. Where it really comes into its own is when you use it with those diminished chords. So basically what I'm doing is barring down there, and I'm basically playing my middle finger on the 12th fret, and then I'm catching the 14th fret with the pinky, and it gets this sound, which basically all I'm doing is looking at that voicing and seeing which notes can move. So there's a couple of ways in which you can finger it. The first would be, rather than play this chord voicing like this, you could bar down and you could do that, and that gives kind of a more pianistic effect because I can hit those chords, those notes in that chord, leave them sustaining, and you get that kind of effect where you get the chord sustaining but the melody note descending like that. Of course, that is a little bit more technically demanding to do, so the other thing that you can do, and of course both of these might work well depending on what effect you want to go for, but the other one is to play more of a strummed kind of block chord motion in which I'm playing 2 separate chords. This one, then this one, and I'm obviously moving that pattern down. And I keep resolving at the F because, my ears just want to hear that resolve, but you don't have to. So option number 1 is playing off the chord. Option number 2 is strumming those chords. So that's the first way that we're looking at harmonizing that diminished line. Option number 2 builds on that. So basically in the first option we looked at this chord, and then we moved the top note of the voicing a tone higher. But we can also move other notes. So if we move that one, then we can also move this D flat right there to maybe an E flat, which produces this chord, which sounds beautiful to me. And then you could do the same thing, right? So there's the first chord, and once again I'm kind of using the block chord motion here because this is harder to do the pianistic technique which I did in the first example, but you can always hybrid pick to get more of a kind of piano-like sound. But in terms of block chord playing, 1 chord, change, same thing down a minor third, you could do. So that's the second example. Once again. Example number 2. The third example also harmonizes that same line, and this is how that sounds. So the chord that I'm using here is this one, which basically you can kind of see the arpeggio built right in on this one. So if I play this, that arpeggio, C sharp arpeggio right there, you can basically play that as kind of a chord, an embigget style chord, and if I move that all the way up here, I could basically play down the diminished scale using this chord, and then this one, which is more familiar, and then this chord, diminished chord, and then that one as well if I wanted to. Now the downside to this one, it is a little bit chunky to grab because you're really kind of moving your fingers in opposite directions, but with a little bit of practice, it's not too bad. So that's the final example there, is when I'm basically alternating between these two inversions. So here is a chord lick which basically demonstrates what I've just shown you in action. I played it at the beginning of the video and played slowly, it sounds like this. So I'm thinking of basically a 2-5-1 here. I'm starting with this C7 flat 9 voicing. This is all over C7 to F. And then I could have gone like that, but just to keep it fluent, I've just played the D flat there with the middle finger, then gone back to that chord. And then I'm using the diminished 7 chord right here. And then I'm going to this 7 flat 9 chord again. So I get this so far. And then I'm playing the G note by itself and then resolving to this beautiful Ed Bickett style F major chord where I've got 7, root and 3. I hope that you found this lesson useful and that these concepts really help you kind of break out of playing the same chords and inversions with the diminished scale. If they did, then please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.